So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Baby Angel Geronimo is just there. So Baby Angel Geronimo leads the ethical and moral narrative about Boris Johnson and his cabal of crooks and liars and depraved, self-seeking careerists. Now, Baby Angel Geronimo, born in New Zealand and kind of invited to live in England in 2017. And Baby Angel Geronimo came to Britain in good faith. And as soon as he arrived, the Baby Angel Geronimo was subjected to a series of demonizing fabrications cooked up by the liars and crooks in the depraved DEFRA department. At the time, 2017, obviously the Baby Angel Geronimo was not being let down by or attacked by Boris Johnson from number 10 Downing Street because he wasn't there. The person who was there was Theresa May, and Theresa May's kind of cabal had its position taken by at DEFRA by someone called Michael Gove. Not probably for the whole duration of Theresa May's years in number 10 Downing Street. But Gove was there in that post in the depraved DEFRA, which post is now held under Boris Johnson's cabal by George Injustice Eustace. Now, this department was, when Tony Blair was in post at number 10 Downing Street, for a significant number of years, the Department for the Environment, which is what this is about, was fronted by the corrupt John Prescott. Corrupt John Prescott is corrupt on the records because he abused his position and conspired on behalf of Tony Blair, who wanted to destroy the social kind of housing component. And for several years, Prescott manipulated the crooks in Tower Hamlets Council to make a deal. And the deal was that the crooks in Tower Hamlets Council would allow the robbery of the council housing stock. And the robbery duly took place. And the robbery was done by two gangs of crooks in Tower Hamlets. One operating as Haque, Poplar Haque, and the other operating as the Tower Hamlets Community Housing. Now, the fact that there are people in the so-called Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, there are people in the so-called other so-called parties in Tower Hamlets, and there were people from the so-called other parties during the robbery being facilitated by Tower Hamlets Council itself and commanded by Tony Liar through the thug John Prescott. Now remember, this was taking place about 2003 to 2006. That is the main number of years that the robbery and the thuggery and the looting of the council housing stock that belonged to the people of Tower Hamlets took place. And remember this, that there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing done by the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, by the Labour councillors in Tower Hamlets, or by the so-called conservative councillors in Tower Hamlets, or by the so-called Lib Dem councillor or councillors in Tower Hamlets. And most certainly was nothing else there, because the imposition of the elected mayor post, the crooked post of elected mayor, was imposed only in October 2010. It was several years after the robbery of the council housing stock took place. So it was mainly in terms of the numbers of people as elected councillors on the council. It is mainly the Labour Party that had the maximum number of councillors, elected councillors, in the name of various wards and various electors, the collected electors in the borough. And there is no record that any of the councillors, a single member of the council, Tower Hamlets Council, objected in any mentionable way. Okay, so the Mail on Sunday today, we are moving away from Tower Hamlets Council for a period. We'll come back to this during this edition, but let's look at this gloating. The gloating by the Daily Mail group, the Mail on Sunday, and it is celebrating in a violent language Nadine Klobar's biased BBC with 2 billion funding cut. Look, this is the kind of thuggery and robbery that I'm talking about. 2 billion cut. I mean, where do you begin to condemn this kind of thing? Now, we all know, at least everyone who has had experience of paying television license fee, which I have for a long number of years, from various addresses. Anyone who has experience of paying license fee to that television thugs would know that these thugs don't always keep the records. They don't have the records, and so they send kind of fascistic intimidation kind of notices, communications. It's like the Gestapo is going to visit your address. That is the tone in which they write this. And this has been the subject of persistent, consistent campaigns and objections and complaints by people who are unfairly and wrongly targeted for this kind of fascistic kind of attacks. That is the reality. So despite that fact, we are not condemning the Mail on Sunday because they take up the case or recognize the existence and operation of this fascistic tactic. And we are not going to condemn the BBC because of the behavior of the license fee paying collecting morons and thugs and criminals. And we are not exonerating the BBC for its bias that we know operates and exists, every single day. What we are objecting to in this piece is that they are attacking a principle. And the principle underlying the existence and the operation of the BBC is that there is a public service component in the BBC's operation and the BBC's kind of behavior. A public service component. And it is the public service component that the fascists of the Daily Mail and the Daily Mail group are unhappy with. They don't want a public service component in anything. They don't want a public service component in the NHS. They don't want a public service component in the BBC. They don't want a public service component anywhere in society. So they are celebrating one of the nastiest fascists going, Nadine Dorries. Clobbering. Clobbering is like hitting with a kind of strong kind of implement, hitting somebody over the head. This is what clobbering means. 2 billion, even in the 2022 prices, is a significant amount of money. And instead of saying democratic accountability by the BBC, and the BBC's kind of agenda should be held to accountability objectively, verifiably established and operated accountability. Instead of saying that, they're celebrating Nadine Dorries attacking the BBC's funding like that, taking £2 billion. Now, even the BBC with the license fee paid money cannot kind of replace £2 billion of cut just like that. That is the whole point. So clobbering the BBC is like a kind of thuggish, gratuitous headline. And there is no evidence in the entire period that the Mail on Sunday has been published, whatever number of years it has been published, and that the Mail on Sunday bothers about the BBC being held to account in an objective way, in a neutral way, in an objective way, in a fair way, in a way that accords with the basic rights of the people who pay the license fee to be given the service that is objective and truthful. What the Mail on Sunday is kind of gratuitously celebrating is the attack on the BBC on behalf of the private, completely private broadcasting businesses who feel that their business is affected by the continued existence of the BBC. Because the counterparts, the broadcasting counterparts of the likes of the Mail on Sunday, the likes of the kind of Sun on Sunday, would be to bash society. That is what they are missing. And they want a clear market where they can kind of concentrate on pushing ordinary people, the many, into silence effectively. Although they are not ever going to admit that, but that is what is happening. Because if you look at the British Fleet Street newspapers and their narrative, there is absolutely no accountability whatsoever, despite the fact that the Levison inquiry was held and there is a so-called kind of press regulator. It's a joke. It's worse than a joke. The tabloid newspapers tell lies every single day. And they've been lying for decades, if not for hundreds of years. Well, it's not tabloid newspapers. Hundreds of years ago, it was all of them. Their size was kind of broadsheet, that is, the likes of the Telegraph or the Sunday Times. This is the broadsheet size of the paper. And what they're missing and what they're kind of itching to get to is a free market, literally free market, so that they can exploit the market and they can hound the many, like ordinary people, out of any platform. And instead of talking about the real freedom, the real democracy, and the real right of say that are being attacked by Priti Patel and Boris Johnson's cabal in their police bill that is going through. Instead of talking about that, the Mail on Sunday is having another go at the BBC. And that suits Nadine Dorries, because she would like that police bill, the fascist bill, giving police unlimited powers, that this is not being discussed. It is the attack on the BBC that is being discussed. Think about that for a minute and you will see. Now, there is a piece about John Barco. About 3 weeks ago, Barco said that in his time he had seen the times of 12 prime ministers, including Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson, to use John Barco, by a country mile, the worst prime minister of all 12. Now, this is not an exclusive opinion about Boris Johnson being the worst prime minister of the 12. Anyone including John Major, who was himself a prime minister, and Michael Heseltine, who was a cabinet minister, can say with insider knowledge, let's say, that Johnson was unfit for purpose. Not only is this the opinion of politicians, actual politicians who have held actual political positions, posts, offices. I'm a politician, but I'm an ethical political activist, moral activist, a campaigner. I'm not a holder of a government office. So there is a difference. If I were a holder of a government office, I would know by definition the various insider tracks and tactics and whatever that goes on within a government department, any government department. My knowledge is entirely ethical and moral and evidential from outside. And that is the difference. Because if I say that Boris Johnson is a crook, I'm relying on the evidence externally published and accessible and available. I'm not able to publish anything like Dominic Cummings, let's say, and his tweets. Because after he effectively was sacked by Carrie Symonds being the latest wife of Boris Johnson, the liar. After Cummings was given the sack because she didn't like Cummings decided to target her for his extensive insider knowledge based tweets, and he has been doing it. And nobody else has had that kind of access to internal events within the government. And what they're saying, the Mail on Sunday, is that the days of state-run television are over, and they're quoting somebody as saying that the BBC isn't going to stop until Boris is gone. Now, as I said, we are not. This campaign, nor I personally, have ever been kind of involved in any alliance with any organization like the BBC or any agency or any department, whatever. Everything we say and everything we present is based on entirely independent and publicly accessible evidence. Whether somebody else accesses that evidence is a different matter. We have no internal secret kind of route to secure any information from inside any department, any agency, whatsoever. So what we know about the BBC and what I know about the BBC, for example, is based entirely on my dealings from the outside with the BBC. For example, in terms of campaigning issues, in terms of representing campaign demands, etc., to the BBC, and especially currently still unresolved, outstanding demand for the last 16 years or so, 17 years or so, against the BBC's Director General, whoever was in charge. It was Greg Dyke, the moron, that was in charge. So it dates back to Greg Dyke's kind of liability and responsibility, and also against Emily Maitlies. Emily Maitlies and a number of other BBC fronters and presenters who lied. Apart from these, I have outstanding claims against the BBC in relation to many other personnel, executives, and reporters, journalists. The same way I have, and the campaigns that I run have claims against the Channel 4, against ITV, against LBC, and so on. These are all based on facts and evidence of their lying, of their dishonesty, and their racism. Despite all of that, the principle that warrants defending by us, and we do defend the BBC on the principle as against the diversionary, double diversionary kind of falsely created excuse and pretext fronted by the dishonest criminal, careerist, opportunistic moron called Nadine Dorries. Nadine Dorries is a shameless, disgraceful, kind of narrow-minded individual with very petty and very limited horizon. I mean, she would take off her clothes if it would give her money, and that is what she did on the ITV show in Australia at the time it was staged. She took off her clothes. That program is, of course, about taking off clothes. I mean, it is aimed at getting women taking part in those kind of disgraceful platforms and getting them to take off their clothes. I mean, keeping just about the barest possible cover on themselves while they take off the rest of the clothes and expose themselves under water, in water, or whatever. And Nadine Dorries has done that in undeniable ways. So Nadine Dorries is saying that the BBC's days are over, state funded broadcasting days are over. She has absolutely no idea that she is lying and she is in denial. Every single Western European country has state funded broadcasting networks and outlets. And in the USA, there is this guaranteed public service network that is there in direct challenge to the commercial networks of television. And that guarantee was given by some of the sources of the funding coming from the commercial television sector, because they recognize the absolute crucial importance of having a public service network available for the public, the voters, the electors, the communities to access or try to access news that is not contaminated by the interference of commercial free market exploiters. Let's check if we can find that name of that American network. It is there right behind my kind of mouth, but I mean, I'm just wanting it to come out, and it is a very good channel the Americans have, and I'll soon find it. Well, the general term is the public service, public broadcasting service. And this is one, but this is not the one that I'm thinking of. This is one of several, let's say. This is the one that is called public broadcasting service. It's a non-commercial, free-to-air television network, public broadcaster. It's a nationwide US, Canada, Northern Mexico, OTA only, founded in November, on November 3, 1969, 52 years ago, by Hartford N. Gunn Jr., John Macy, James Day, Kenneth A. Christensen. And it's based in Arlington, Virginia. And it was launched on the 5th of October 1970, 51 years ago. And the picture format is HDTV. So that's the one, and they're defining it as. Let's go back to the one that it just slipped away. So it says that the public broadcaster and television program distributor based in Arlington in Virginia. The Public Broadcasting Service is a publicly funded non-profit organization and the most prominent provider of educational program to public television stations in the United States, distributing series such as American Experience, America's Test Kitchen, Antiques Roadshow, and all the other things. PBS is funded by a combination of member station dues, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, pledge drives, and donations from both private foundations and individual citizens. So this is one, but I'm looking for another one that now this is the limitation on the internet search because the accessibility to the information that they provide is obstructive and limiting. There is one channel that I am looking for, and it's not coming up in the search terms that I've used. but it is a very frequently watched channel. And yet it's not there in the list that I've so far covered. So this is part of the problem with the media. They're not accessible, they're not sharing, and they're not publicizing this particular channel. I'll find it, but the fact that it is taking as long as it is shows that they want to hide it. Now, I have looked at all kinds of search terms and I have used, and it's not coming up. And this channel, which broadcasts objectively, is not coming up in any of the searches, but it is there. It is. That is it. It has. You see, the search term that I have used is US non-profit political TV channel. That's the number of words that I've had to use. And this is the one that has come up. So how long it has taken is a measure of the obstruction put in the way of accessing this channel by the commercial multinationals that control the broadcasting business. Now this is called C-SPAN. I have watched it, but I could not remember it. Cable Satellite Public Affairs Network. C-SPAN. Cable, then span. Satellite, P, public, A, affairs, and N, network. Now, just to compare the Mail and Sunday's sick-making attack on the idea of the public service broadcasting. That means that we are not excusing any of the errors and the wrongs and the bias and the corruption of the BBC and the distortion and the abuse of the mental slaves like Patrick Young. Patrick Young and the number of the West Bengali boy and a few other criminals that have direct contact with me and they've distorted and lied. Now, this one, C-SPAN, was launched in March on the 19th of March 1979, that is 42 years ago. And this is what I referred to from memory. Is an American cable and satellite television network that was created in 1979 by the cable television industry. As a cable television industry itself created this in 1979 as a non-profit public service. It televises many proceedings of the United States federal government as well as other public affairs programming. The C-SPAN network includes the television channels C-SPAN, C-SPAN 3, airing other government hearings and related programming, the radio station WCSP-FM, and a group of websites which provide streaming media and archive of C-SPAN programs. C-SPAN's television channels are available to approximately 100 million cable and satellite households within the United States, while WCSP-FM is broadcast on FM radio in Washington, D.C., and is available throughout the US on Sirius XM via internet streaming and globally through apps for iOS and Android devices. The network television US political events, I'm reading that again. The network televises US political events, particularly live and gavel-to-gavel coverage of the US Congress. C-SPAN also televises occasional proceedings of the Australian, British, including weekly Prime Minister's questions, and Canadian parliaments, as well as other major events worldwide. Its coverage of political and policy events is unmoderated, providing the audience with unfiltered information about politics and government. Non-political coverage includes historical programming, programs dedicated to non-fiction books, and interview programs with noteworthy individuals associated with public policy. C-SPAN is a private, non-profit organization funded by its cable and satellite affiliates, and it does not have advertisements on any of its networks. That is very significant because that is exactly what the BBC, at least domestically, does. It doesn't have any advertisements, radio stations, or website, nor does it solicit donations or pledges. The network operates independently, and neither the cable industry nor Congress has control of its programming content. Now, this is absolutely the nearest operation to the BBC. Again, I mean, the BBC's structure is bureaucratic and corrupting, but that is the nearest general kind of comparison. And the man who conceived the C-SPAN in 1975 is called Brian Lamb, while working as the Washington, D.C. bureau chief of the cable industry trade magazine, Cablevision. And that's the picture of Brian Lamb, the founder of C-SPAN. This picture is taken in 2012. This is the picture of this man, taken in 2012. This is Brian Lamb. So, when the Nadine Dorries, the idiot and a woman of questionable integrity, is given this platform by the stupid morons of the Daily Mail group, that she clobbered them with £2 billion cuts. She is obviously engaged in a diversionary program of her own. Because that helps Boris Johnson. If an attack on the BBC is the lead front page splash on the Mail on Sunday, then to that extent, Boris Johnson is spared the outraged viewers and readers' attention. Because the number of daily disclosures about corruption and lying by the Boris Johnson cabal are so frequent that Johnson is sinking under the kind of unleashing of the disclosures on a daily or even hourly basis about how many laws he has been breaking. And here is a piece by Glenn Owen. What is he? He is the political editor of the Mail on Sunday, it says. And this is the 3-point lunatic, fascistic shake-up that Boris Johnson is going to stage. He's going to take charge of migrant crisis and form a number 10 NHS war room. So what he's going to do, he's going to wage a lethal war against the NHS and destroy it and make it available to the US conglomerates, so that when he's out of number 10 Downing Street, they will pay him billions of pounds, just like David Cameron was paid. He will mastermind cabinet reshuffle and a clear out of Downing Street staff. And allies hope that a shake-up will keep him safe until summer. Now that is a complete and utter stupidity. The Mail on Sunday is going to be proven wrong again. And Johnson is not going to stay. And then Liam Fox, another liar and criminal, says politics is not the X factor. We don't need a new prime minister. And there is this piece about Andrew Windsor. And the liar, Wes Streeting, is given a platform by the Mail on Scumday. And there is a woman who is saying that she was sexually assaulted by a transgender rapist in a women's jail. And this thing is the next big crisis for this society. I mean, this whole issue about transgender. I mean, what it is creating a new gender, which is not new at all. It's man claiming to be women. That is what is happening. And I've got a Muslim named woman writing in the Mail on Sunday against Angela Rayner. Because what has happened with Angela Rayner is that whenever she is let loose in the House of Commons, she scores substantial political points against the corrupt scum. And that's what is upsetting the Mail on Sunday, as it is upsetting Keir Starmer too. And we say that Angela Rayner, forget about the grammar, just carry on. And if anything, it's Angela Rayner who is making the waves. But they're not letting her on too many platforms because they are jealous and alarmed that she is going to sweep the floor with Keir Starmer and replace him without much problem. And here is Dan Hodges. Dan Hodges, who was insanely obsessed with attacking non-existent enemies of Theresa May. Non-existent enemies in the society, not in the Conservative Party, that is. And here he is saying there is Dominic Cummings is attacking Boris Johnson. And he's attacking, it seems in the cartoon, attacking Andrew Windsor as well. And his heading is, if Cummings's coup brings Boris down, he's ignoring everything happening in the country, everything happening in the parties in the Downing Street kind of territory. He is blaming Dominic Cummings for Boris Johnson's fall. He's saying, therefore, if Cummings's coup brings Boris Johnson down, it won't be the end of the bloodletting, it will be the start. And he is in denial, this Dan Hodges. He says that nothing is of any consequence at all. And the Mail on Sunday is saying that Donald Trump is back, on the way back to the White House. That's what they're saying, confident. Now, there is a piece in the Mail on Sunday about Priyambada Gopal. This is somebody that has been inflicted on England. She's a new arrival in England. And it's remarkable that she has been given kind of prominent platforms, as well as being appointed a professor at the University of Cambridge. She is a crook and a liar. And she doesn't have any contact with the anti-racist people, but she keeps talking about fighting racists at Cambridge University and elsewhere. She only came into the UK in the 90s. Let's look at Priyambada Gopal's stupid latest stunt. A public row between two leading Cambridge academics. Now that is idiocy. She's not a leading academic at all. She's a fake. A public row between two leading Cambridge academics has intensified amid accusations of anti-Semitism. Historian David Abulafia claimed that Priyambada Gopal expressed an anti-Jewish slur by appearing to suggest that he had colluded with the student newspaper Varsity in an interview attacking her. The row began when Professor Gopal, a professor of post-colonial literature, that's a complete fucking stupid shit claim, said it was offensive for Professor Abulafia to describe the history professor and television documentary presenter David Olusoga as eloquent. She tweeted, calling writers, scholars, intellectuals of color eloquent or articulate, e.g., Abulafia on Olusoga, can quite often be a little sleight of hand dismissal. Professor Abulafia dismissed the criticism and suggested that it was insulting or possibly libelous in an interview with the student newspaper. This is Priyambada Gopal kind of inventing a row. Now she is correct in saying that the use of eloquent or articulate in the way she has described it is a sleight of hand. That is absolutely true. But she has hardly any alliance with people of African or Asian origin or background, or people who are fighting racism on the ground anywhere in the UK. So she could be, I mean, I'm not giving any specific kind of connection with any element in the Republic of India who might be kind of handling her. But she has surfaced without any notice, that is to say. By without notice, I mean her assertion is not based on real experience of fighting racism and colonialism, as ordinary people do. Fight racism and colonialism in ordinary walks of life. So is this interview actually taken from Saturday's kind of Times? Was there a piece in Saturday's Times newspaper that actually referred to Priyambada Gopal? Remember, I have been, let's say, studying her since she surfaced in public, and I have noticed her dishonesty. She has no idea about society in this country. This is the Times that I'm looking for, the Times of Saturday, and if I can find anything about the so-called row between Priyambada Gopal and the two persons who claim to be Jewish themselves and another academic. Another academic who says that he has been libeled. That is it, yes. It's on page 20 of the Times of Saturday, the 15th of January, 2022. And this is the piece which is headed Anti-Semite Claim Deepens Cambridge Academics Row. Now, when a newspaper, even though it is not the paper of the record or newspaper of the record or newspaper of record, it is still a newspaper. And on page 20 it says, a public dispute between two Cambridge professors has deepened after one accused the other of anti-Semitism. And the one that is accusing the other, the one is David Abulafia, said that his colleague Priyambada Gopal was out of control. And he's saying, well, this piece is saying that dispute began this week when Gopal, a professor of post-colonial literature, I'm only doing this as reference. I'm not accepting that post at all, and the Cambridge University has been stupid to create this bogus post. Accused Abulafia, formerly chairman of the history faculty, of being offensive in his description of the history professor David Olusoga. She wrote, calling writers, scholars, intellectuals of color eloquent or articulate, e.g. Abulafia Olusoga, can quite often be a little sleight of hand dismissal. Abulafia said this was preposterous and criticized the outgoing Vice Chancellor, Professor Stephen Toop, for overseeing a woke environment that had encouraged Gopal. Abulafia said, I'm not trying to get Gopal sacked, but she is clearly completely out of control. In a series of tweets, she claimed that the student newspaper journalist I spoke to was part of a conspiracy. Both he and I are Jewish, and we are all familiar with the anti-Semitic Jewish conspiracy trope. She even referenced guidelines designed to stop hate speech around the Holocaust. She is a woke warrior, and this dissection of language just creates more division. Now we are calling people who say something positive offensive. It's like Alice in Wonderland. And we've gone through the looking glass where everything is upside down. I have thought about legal action. That is what Abulafia is saying. Now I'll continue to read up to the end of that piece in the Times, which so he's saying both he, that is a student journalist at the Cambridge University paper called the Varsity, both he and I are Jewish, and we're all familiar with the anti-Semitic Jewish conspiracy trope. She, that is Gopal, even referenced guidelines designed to stop hate speech around the Holocaust. She's a woke warrior, and this dissection of language just creates more division. Now we are calling people who say something positive offensive. It's like Alice in Wonderland, and we've gone through the looking glass where everything is upside down. I have thought about legal action, and this is what I was looking for actually when I came across the same statement in the Sunday Times. Continuing this David Abulafia quotation. I have lots of lawyers in my family and friends, so we will see. I think ultimately the buck stops with the Vice Chancellor Stephen Toop, who has been leading this direction of travel since he started at the university. Early in his tenure, he commissioned an examination of Cambridge's links to slavery. I'm not against that sort of thing, but some of the research was just not scholarly. I have been in touch with a vice chancellor at another university who had issues with students wanting to decolonize the curriculum, and he was able to keep a bit more of a handle on it. I think Toop allowed all of this whole crusade to go ahead. Now, I have words to say about crusade, but let's continue with this last two paragraphs or so. Abulafia made the remark about Olusoga in an article about the acquittal of the Colston Four this month for toppling the statue of Edward Colston in 2020. Olusoga testified at the trial. He wrote, the jury was not being asked to judge Colston, even though the defense thought it appropriate to call the eloquent David Olusoga and to ask him to describe Colston's career. Gopal tweeted the article saying, few undergraduates produce work this week after the first week or so. Abulafia responded in an interview with Varsity, calling her comments about his remarks on Olusoga potentially libelous. Cambridge University did not comment, but a source said that the colonialism research mentioned by Abulafia would report in the spring. Gopal did not respond to a request for comment. Now that is in the Times of Saturday the 15th. Saturday the 15th of January 2022. The point is that the whole basis of the University of Cambridge making the claim about colonial history, colonialism history, let's say, is bogus. Everything in every single university in England about history, about civilization, and so on is absolutely corrupt. Full stop. And as I said, this is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, this program, the KhoodeelaR television channel. And by Fleet Street, we refer, of course, to the print titles, the newspapers like the Daily Mail and the Scum, and the Beaverbrook paper called the Daily Express, depress, suppress the truth. Now, this is the Daily Boris Johnson graph. Now we start calling it again the Daily Telegraph because it is quite clear that Boris Johnson graph, the era is ended and there will be no real kind of rehabilitation of Boris Johnson in the Daily Boris graph. And this is Amelia Fox, is a member of the Fox family. And is a cousin of Lawrence Fox. Therapy, an amazing new man, and wise words from her dad, Edward Fox, have helped silent witness star Amelia Fox relax into her 40s. She tells Cole Morton why it took so long for her to say, "I'm happy to be me." So that's the ones that she's being given the promotion with that cover photo, which says, "My family and other animals." So she calls them, of course, it's an endearing kind of reference. So this one, as well as the cover of the Sunday, is it the Sunday Times? Yes, it's the cover of the Scum on Sunday, which is promoting Stella Creasy. Now, Stella Creasy is being promoted as a symbol of the campaign for women MPs to be allowed No, this is the Sunday Times, not the Common Sun. This is Sunday Times main cover of the Sunday Times magazine. That's Stella Creasy and its Mother versus Parliament. And they are calling it How Stella Creasy's Fight for Maternity Rights Got Personal. And this is the same Sunday Times, same title that is, not the same edition, of course, that nearly 50 years ago launched a stupid attack on the Bangladeshis speaking Siloti in the Brick Lane area. The Sunday Times of 2nd of December 1973. And this piece is, of course, the opposite of what the Sunday Times did against the Siloti speaking Bangladeshis in the Brick Lane area in Tower Hamlets. So we have limitation on the kind of processing of this video because we have to check the contents and check the details after each broadcast for accuracy and so on. So this is just over an hour, I think. It's over 1 hour and 25 minutes or so. So we shall stop this particular part here, and hopefully we shall be continuing with the rest of what we would have said in a longer program. But we are now going to limit this each broadcast to under 2 hours for the technical reasons I have explained briefly. Because there is a lot of work that goes on with each broadcast. It may not appear to be so, but it's very, very detailed and very, very kind of intensive. So we shall stop this edition at 15:07 hours GMT, and we shall continue the next edition whenever it is practicable.